That's no fun. Let's see. I'm gonna switch this over to this screen. Oh, maybe it'll open. You can do it. You are brave. There we go. And this needs to be tomorrow. Can't believe it is already the 22nd tomorrow.
Yeah.
I feel like that really snuck up on me.
Yes, I agree.
Like, what in the world is going on? So this is the chart for Monday. This is starting what time? Let's just do the noon time because that makes more sense. So we are moving into Cancer, the good old Cancer moon energy today, this evening. So we'll see how Pisces season feels when we move into the water moon. Cancer plus Pisces is a lot of emotions. So I shared the MoonScopes in the group. I don't know if you were able to download them and look at them yet, but definitely they're there now. So you can definitely pull them up. And the moon ritual is there also. The moon in Cancer is super emotional, and it's going to trine the sun. So this can be just hypersensitivity and, especially just stuff that like we don't usually get emotional about. Hopefully it's good things too. This can be like just watching reels or TikToks and crying and being like, whoa, like I didn't expect, what's that, but I want to make sure that everybody takes the chance to, I described it as steeping in your own juices. Because we did do a lot more emotional work during Aquarius season than was anticipated by astrologers or me. I think a lot of people were sort of taken off guard by how emotional the retrograde was of Mercury as well. We just have a lot of planets in Aquarius, as you can see. Like there's this just pile up here. Like this is a lot. The sun was here during that time as well. So there's just it's a lot when we have very big pileups of planets. But I think also Aquarius represents the collective culture and society and how we feel about humanity and human rights and all of those things. And so I think we've been doing a lot of shedding, maybe more than we thought over the last year, and that kind of all just sort of like got squeezed out. So this Cancer moon is an opportunity to really sit with what wounding is and how it becomes part of our identity. And I think this is especially true as for me to say as someone who is disabled and has chronic pain. I feel like I have to check in often to make sure that it's not so much a part of my identity that I maybe don't notice the days when I have less pain, or I don't I let it take over my life, and this can be a sort of a Cancer thing. They can hang on really tightly to scary things or wounds or bad experiences. They hold a grudge pretty seriously, and they do it with this kind of like, I'm fine attitude, or like they've completely forgotten you. They break up with you and they never speak to you again, and you think they never think of you, but they're thinking about you all the time. I mean, it's kind of like, and maybe they're not thinking about you, but with Cancer, it gets woven into the body, right? Cancer rules the water, the heart, the water sac around the heart, the stomach, and it's a very emotional sign. So these emotional wounds, we also tend to not pay as close attention to them as we do physical wounds. So, I was in a car accident and I broke my arm and I have ongoing arm issues. It's like, okay, but you also have the terror of being in a car accident, the missed work, the worry that your family felt about you, and then all the stress you had to deal with insurance, like all of that stuff just is like layers of wounding. And because we're so focused on like valid wounding, like, oh, the broken arm is the most important thing, or the loss of the car is even more important than the terror we feel, or this how scared we might be to drive again, or If our kids were in the car or another family member was, there's just these like layers and they get kind of um, heavy to carry around, and Cancer tries to do it. It's like, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then those things can also become repetitive, or we use them as part of our identity, or why we can't do scary things. And we see phobias rise up in water signs. They get fear of driving, then they'll never drive again because of that one time that they drove and they got in a car accident. So we need to, instead of trying to avoid the emotional thing, which is very much what the patriarchy and capitalism are about, is like, you're fine now, you're healed, right? You don't need to think about it anymore. Just keep going and go back to work and drive. Like, you have to do these things again. So we need to watch the balance of like how we're being forced to avoid dealing with the wounds and how we're using them as coping mechanisms. And I loved that it just kind of, was like sitting in the bathtub too long. It's like a really nice, relaxing bath. And then there's that moment where you're like, okay, I need to get out. Right. It's like I'm getting pruny, the water's starting to get cold, you're like shivering. It's like, all right, this is done. This is no longer helpful. And there's that time where you just like stay in too long and you're like, okay, now I've just undone all the healing. And we need to regularly drain that. We need to regularly double check and make sure that we're not carrying around um, too much emotional wounding. That's like, it's like carrying a bucket of water. When you get a Pisces sun and a Cancer moon, you've got two buckets of water, and you're trying to carry both of them without spilling any of the water, right? And that's just a lot of water. So all the water signs during Pisces season, it's really good to check in. Cancer stuff will be more focused on family, mother wounds, the stomach, digestion, food, comfort, right? Where Scorpio will be more about secrets and, our rage and things we hide from others and ourselves, emotionally, especially. Any questions about that? No? Okay. And then we have the Leo moon. So that starts on the 24th. Let's see if we can get this thing to move over. So this is the start of the Leo moon here. Leo is a fixed sign. So it's going to square or oppose, sorry, all that stuff in Aquarius. So a big part of the Leo work we did in the last season, which hopefully you got a chance to go back and review if you did the Leo moon ritual, which was on the 28th of January, we talked a lot about, radical self-care and pride. Um, and it's a good time to check back. So whenever we move into a new season and we see those moons come around again, it's a good time to go back and look at those rituals and say, okay, well, what was going on for me there? And how has it changed to now? And what do I think about it now? And what do I need to sort of tweak? None of these rituals are like these finite things, right? That it's a spiral. So we're always kind of coming back around to those points again. And the purpose of this whole thing is that checking in, looking back, reflection, preparation, reflection, preparation, notes, like all those things, they have to be done again and again. We can't just do a ritual and then be like, zing, done with that, moving on. Because there's going to be another layer that we're like, oh no, more of this. Okay. And especially if we do some deep emotional healing during the Cancer phase, this moon is going to, in Leo, is going to reveal like new layers of, oh gosh, okay, I guess there's more radical self-care to be done here. So I think that's also related to what I was saying about Aquarius season, and that we are doing a lot of collective work, and a lot of it is shameful, especially for white people, or it should be. Maybe not all the white people are feeling it, but they are starting to, a lot more are starting to, and it's more and more layers of things that are being revealed to us about shame and guilt, and processing that has been, it's a lot. And I think the Leo moon is always a great time for white people to especially go back and just do another check of that, check in on their own anti-racism work, notice what the people around them are doing, and do they need help? And then also, it's a great time to just check in on radical group care, which is what Aquarius is about. It's the opposite. When we take good care of ourselves and we make sure that the people in our neighborhoods and communities, people we can actually impact on a daily basis, are able to take good care of themselves, then all of a sudden we have a really strong community. And Aquarius is like, yes, huzzah, that's what I'm after. um, so it's just really imperative that we remember that Leo doesn't do the drama and the Leo shade that it gets for being kind of self-centered for no good reason. It does it for a purpose. It wants us all to be able to shine our light and to feel like we're loved, and to know that we're loved, and to be able to be seen as whatever we are without any shame. And it isn't an accident that, you know, um, being prideful or having self worth or even being a little vain, if you like your lips or your eyes or your hair, whatever, like, be like, I'm good, I'm gorgeous. That vanity, these are like the seven deadly sins, are trying to keep us from being very Leo or very Virgo, as individuals. And when we aren't ourselves and we don't feel proud of ourselves, it's easy to keep us down. It's easier to control us and force us to do things that we would not do otherwise. Um, and it's easier for us to hate on other people. It's easier for us to find fault in other people when that's what they're teaching us to do to ourselves, right? We're analyzing other people, because we are jealous or because we are feeling like they're getting more attention than we are, even though we're not supposed to have it. It's like it's this very fucked up, um, counter narrative that they're constantly weaving, that it just literally makes no sense. Um, but it's worked. So these 3 moons especially are really, 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 about untangling the emotional wounding we have, the wounding we have to pride, and just self-worth. And then, when we shine our light, we open up the opportunity for other people to shine their light too. We should all just be shining our lights back and forth at each other, like beep beep. It's like a big dance party where we're all just like, yeah. And that's really an important part of the Leo moon energy too, as the Leo moon here and Taurus is going to square Uranus in Taurus, and then it's going to square Mars in Taurus before it leaves. Um, and so this is really like changing the value systems, right? Taurus is about resources, it's about money, it's about what we value, but it's also about basic needs. Taurus is like, do you have shelter? Do you have food? Do you have warmth? But it's also like, do you have love? Right? Taurus doesn't leave out, it equates that with those things. Like, do you have hugs? Right? Do you have a cozy bed? These are the things that Taurus cares about. It wants everyone to have all of those things. And so as this moon is squaring those things, it's at an opposing Aquarius, it sets off that T square again that I've been writing about, where we see things like, the Leo full moon brought us all the madness with the farmers in India, and I posted about how like they were protesting by driving their tractors into the city, protesting these new regulations that were going to make it so that they couldn't make money. They just couldn't do it. And so there's the money, there's these, individuals wanting to just live their fucking lives and driving into the city, right? And being like, the government is not taking care of us, right? So we do see some energy around social safety nets and government, right? The Leo is the king or the queen. So we see like rulers needing to check themselves. We see, and I imagine that by the time this moon is in full swing, we're going to see a lot of stuff come out around in Texas. Which, y'all, I was like cracking up laughing about how Texas was the center of this energy crisis and all of this drama, and Texas's animal is the bull. Right? When we think of Texas, we think of like cows, and there's poor little Texas, like, why are we getting the brunt of this like Uranian electricity, right? Uranus is like electrical grids, of course, like big electricity, big shifts, and fucking surprises. Everyone in Texas is like, is that snow? What's snow? Like, what's this? What's happening? We don't know even know. We have no infrastructure for this, right? Of course they wouldn't build a power grid that was ready for 20 degrees for days on end because they don't have that. It's like here in Oregon when people get mad that they don't plow the roads, and we're like, they don't own plows. Do you know how much money it costs to maintain plows? Like, we get snow every 3 years, or maybe 2 years in a row, but like sometimes there'll be 5 years in between. So this can be about the infrastructure of a community around that kind of self-care and group care. Like, are we taking care of each other? Are those people's lives more important than money or the money that was saved? So I imagine there'll be a lot of talks about like utilities and socialism, right? Because Texas doesn't have government run utilities like a lot of states are used to having. So it's interesting. It's just different. So there may be some talks about that, or just watch for news articles popping up around. I imagine there's a whole lot of angry Texans, out there who are like, the fuck is this, right? And when Mars is squares that moon squares that Mars, we might see some aggression once their power is hopefully all restored and it starts to warm up. The other thing is we might see it warm up too when the moon hits that Mars. We might see them suddenly exiting that horrible frozen time. And then the moon is moving into Virgo, and that will be our full moon period. And this was a big one for me. I got like all of these moons, I got a lot of pretty intense downloads when thinking about these, because Virgo has had a rough go. I think of all the signs, Virgo has been the most victimized by patriarchy and capitalism. And I forget that sometimes. Virgo has pretty solid keywords, and people have a lot of like shade for Virgos in modern astrology and in popular culture. They're bossy, they're judgmental, they're hypercritical, they're anal, they're very clean or overly clean. And they're all the virgin, they're all the nurses, they're all nun. They have that nun energy, right? They're all in servitude. But the history of Virgo, which those of you who are doing the Dark Moon book club will learn, these were actually originating, the Virgo story originates in the healer that was in the village. And not the one that, is the old crone in the woods. These were like young, the Vestal virgins. They chose not to get married. They chose not to join in community that way. They lived in the temple, which was usually at the center of their village or town. They were in charge of the fire, the hearth fire. They were herbalists. They were astrologers. And they used all kinds of tools for healing, sex being the number one. So soldiers would come back from, or hunters, I would even say, because they wouldn't even necessarily be soldiers, but they would come back from hunting, which is harder than you think if you've never killed an animal. Most people haven't. It can be traumatizing, right? But also just life is traumatizing. And back then it was more traumatizing. People died right and left. Babies died. People were traumatized by life. It wasn't easy. So they used, ritual sex. They used ritual herbs. They used drugs. They had all kinds of things that we demonize. And just like with Leo, where we look at the 7 deadly sins were created from, trying to keep people from being in love with themselves, thinking they were great. I'm awesome. You're awesome. I'm awesome. They used those things as control mechanisms as well. Our guilt and our shame around sexuality, gender, our roles as healers. They outlawed, banished, forbade, and restricted all of these things for some reason, right? All of the major religions banished astrology. They all banished, women were forced into this choice of maiden, mother, crone job, right? It's like, you will either be the virgin and the nun and the nurse, and you'll never get married, even if you want to. Like, we're going to decide for you. You have no autonomy. You have no control. And we saw those shifts with major religions. And then the Vestal Virgin story is actually very horrifying. If anyone wants to do research, they ended up forcing them into celibacy. And if any of them ended up pregnant, they would bury them in the ground in these little like apartments, these like encased apartments in the ground until they died. They would just starve them and suffocate them pregnant in the ground. Um, so that, it was like, what is the messaging there? And how did that go through Virgo? Because each of us has Virgo in our chart. Each of us is a Virgo. We Virgo, right? It becomes a verb. How do you Virgo? You look at the Virgo in your chart and you say, and what house is that in? And so for me, I have Virgo in the third house. So I want to help my local community. I volunteer a lot. I love to work with different organizations by being an administrator, helping with organization. That's how I Virgo, right? I don't really have any, I have an asteroid there, but I don't really have any planets there. I have my IC there. So looking at your Virgo and your chart and seeing how you Virgo and how you are a healer is going to be a big part of the full moon ritual. And looking at shame and looking at things that you feel shamed about, and places where you've been shamed throughout your life for not being good enough. Like we're looking at those words like judgment and being bossy. I think especially for those of us socialized as female in our childhoods, a boy was allowed to do things we weren't allowed to do. Bossy was one of them, right? It was okay for them to be strong and confident, and we were bossy and bitchy. And we know that now, we know more of that now, but we need to take time. And the Virgo moon is a great time to do this, to just sit with some of that stuff and sit with that little person who went through that and say, you're okay. It's okay. And sex comes up a lot. People are always like, Scorpios are so sexy. They love sex. Scorpios love intimacy. They seek intimacy. And sometimes that is sex. They are interested in taboo things. And so sometimes that sex can be a little more intense than other people might like. But Virgos are the sexiest. They are the sexiest of the signs. And that can be really hard on a culture that puts sex everywhere in the news and on billboards, and it uses everything as it's how we sell everything, but it's bad. It's deviant and it's gross and it's disgusting. And people who like that are horrifying. And there are a lot of things to think about, like sex work, the age of consent. Like suddenly a woman turns 18 and she's perfectly capable of handling all these things. But when she was 17 and a half, she was a minor, and that was horrible, right? So unpacking some of those things, sex education, this can also be related to like things like midwifing, childbirth, our body parts in that way and how they work. And then thinking a lot about like gender roles. This is also Virgo's job, right? I would say all the Vestal Virgins were not women. Homosexuality was not forbidden. Group sex was not forbidden, right? These were all things they did. Ecstasy was considered a healing. Orgasms were considered healing things. They were not like forbidden or weird or not talked about. So it's a lot to unpack, and there may be a lot that comes up while you're doing the ritual. So, it can be tender. And Virgo, it's odd to do tender work with Virgo because it is an earth sign. It's ruled by Mercury. So it's very logical. And I think this is why it was easy for the patriarchy to do this to it, because it likes rules, it likes order, it likes things to be clean and safe. And so when told, oh no, this is better, Virgo will just glom onto that. So we need to re-explain to the Virgo, no, that's not better. Actually, we are now cut off from our healing tools. We are cut off from our divination, our imagination magic. We don't feel like any of those things are legit healing tools because they're not tangible. And Virgo's like, well, if I can't see it, it's not true. It used to know better, and over these years, we've lost touch with that, and that needs to be remedied. So, the full moon ritual. Let's see. That's at 11:16. I love this app. It's so nice. Whoops. Just be able to bop around. So this is the chart of the full moon. And it is a Gemini rising chart. So there's a lot of Mercury involved. So I talk a lot about mindset stuff in both the MoonScope and the ritual. Thoughts become things is a really big saying for Virgo. Because for Virgo, that's true. Which is what I was kind of just saying about how, like, well, if it isn't real, then Virgo can easily dismiss it. But when it is convinced that magic is real, then it is. This is how Virgo operates. So for the ritual, one of the things that I mentioned everyone should have for the ritual is their own magical healing tools. I wish I had saved this not upside down. Let me see if I have it. I can put it up on the screen. I think I do. This is it. Yeah. Move over. Is your own tools. And this can be confusing, I think, because a lot of us are still in a place where we don't feel like we have tools, healing tools, especially if you're not in a career that's considered a healer. You know, people often say to me, like, you're a healer. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm an astrologer. Like, it's not all about healing. I'm a healer in other ways. The truth is that everyone is a healer because we all have Virgo in our chart and we all want to take care of other things. Sometimes those things are just plants. Sometimes they're just animals. It doesn't mean that everyone likes other people because everyone does not. And sometimes the only healing we do is for ourselves, and that is also okay. So when you're thinking about gathering your personal magical healing tools, and you start to feel challenged, yeah, I say, like, think outside the patriarchal cage, not the box. Like, it's a cage that we've been put in. It is a restriction that's kind of hard to unwind sometimes. But, you know, like I said, if all you do is make tea for when your friends come over and you make tea for them, you're a healer. They're sad, they've had a bad day, you give them tea, you talk to them, you listen to them, they feel better. It doesn't have to be your job either. I think with Virgo energy, we can easily it's an earth sign, so we can easily fall into that capitalism trap of like, well, it's not my job to be a healer. Well, if everyone in your family comes to you, loves your food, loves your baking, you know, it's like water for chocolate type stuff. Like whatever you cook makes them feel good. Think about it. Like, what are the things that also bring you joy when you do them? You know, if you really just love buying gifts for people, that can be your healing tool. If you really like, you know, making candles, I mean, the possibility, there is no wrong answer for this. And what are the tools needed to do that? Okay. And if there's not a literal tool, like maybe it's just when you're talking, you can just write it on a piece of paper. When I talk, that's my tool for the ritual. Because you are going to lay them out and hold them up and, you know, do some actual work with those items. So take some time to think about it. And if you need help, you know, you want to talk about it, I'm totally here and I'm happy to chat with anyone about what their magical tools are. And it can definitely be what you do for a living. Even if you're, like I said, even if you're an accountant, you know, a calculator is your tool. If you're helping people heal their money wounds, that's a totally legitimate thing. We need people to count our resources and help us manage our resources. There's nothing wrong with money. If you're a baker, it's a measuring cup. If you're an artist, it's a paintbrush. If you cut hair, it's scissors, right? It's like there are many things that we do to make other people feel good. And it can be your job and your hobby, right? You can pull as many of these tools as you want. But don't leave out anything because you don't think it's good enough or right? Because that is what has already happened to Virgo. That's what's been done. We're trying to undo that. So we're going to talk about, you know, what is healthy. What does that mean to be healthy? And so the other thing to consider about Virgo season is oftentimes that, again, goes back to the broken arm and not the terror and the holistic care that we need as these weird beings who think about stuff so much and try to make sense of the world. Um, a broken limb for an animal in the wild is the end of their life, right? Most often they don't survive that. And so one of the things like in anthropology, one of the first things they look at when they find a new set of bones in ruins is for things like mended broken bones. Because if they see mended broken bones in the skeletal remains, then they know those people took care of each other. They know those people cared about each other enough to to keep them safe from predators and to feed them and to bring them what they needed. And so that is often like one of the first signs of a culture that has this intentional community sense about it, right? There isn't a squirrel that drags another squirrel into its burrow and takes care of it that we know of anyway. I mean, maybe there's a YouTube video of that, but it's not common for their species to do those things. And we see that in animals that we've domesticated, right? They are more likely to do it because their needs are met, right? They have their needs met, so they're more likely to show up and be helpful and to do these heroic things that wild animals do not have time for because survival is all they've got going on. So if anyone has any questions about different things that they can bring forward for the ritual, great. You are going to need your symbol from the Gemini moon again. So you'll want to have that ready. And I think that is about it. Oh, the moon will move into Libra too, half the day on Sunday. But I didn't write about it in this set of MoonScopes because they won't have any transits. The moon will not be transiting anything during that time. So I left that to later in Q3. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's it. Any questions, Hannah? Anything I can answer for you or?
Hi. Oh, I just sent you a message in the chat and I'm glad
Oh,
that it's coming to an end because I was just getting ready to jump off. Um, but I wanted to say thank you. And I took lots of notes on Virgo. I find it all really beautiful how you just explained it. I'm excited to work with that. It's in my 8th house. So
ooh, yeah,
work, yeah, work to do there. And yeah,
definitely.
definitely excited for the full moon. Um, I look forward to your rituals. Full moon's not usually a time of the month that I connect with. I'm more so dark moon and new moon. So this is going to be a good one for me.
Yeah, this
I'll
one
keep
in
you
the
posted.
8th will feel very dark moon, new moon for you. So I look
I
forward to
think so
hearing
too.
about it.
Okay, I will share all of that with you. I hope you have
Yes.
a great rest of your evening. I'm gonna head out now though. Thank
You
you.
too. Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.